My video response for my Tram experience. Man, that woman has balls. What do you think? Could you imagine anybody in America talking that way? No one in America would dare talk that way because whites are terrified of being called racist because you know what? Racism is the #1 crime in the world. It beats out murder, rape, child molestation. If you're a racist, that's it. You need to go to prison forever. I support her right to free speech. I don't think she went about it the right way. She had a child on her lap and she was screaming profanities, maybe not setting the best example for that child. But you know what? If that child hadn't been on her lap, I guarantee you that guy behind her was going to hit her for sure. But he showed some self-restraint because she had the child on her lap. So maybe it was a good thing the child was there. That child probably saved her from making a trip to the hospital, although she was arrested for her hate speech. But she has every right as a white woman to be dissatisfied with the massive amount of non-white immigration into her formerly white homeland of Britain. And whites don't like non-white immigration for this reason, because of the crime that accompanies non-white immigration. Okay, look at any major city in America and you will find that where there is a large black population, you will see a ghetto slum full of gangbangers, thugs, and robberies, murders, rapes, drugs, and every other type of violent behavior that accompanies this type of demographic. Yeah, I'm really sorry if you don't believe me. Just go to maybe the south side of Chicago or south central LA or Philadelphia or Washington D.C. or Detroit or East St. Louis if you don't believe me. And if you're going to sit here and dispute with me and say that I'm a racist for stating a fact, well, you're a liar. And I don't understand why whites don't have any right to object to their homelands being flooded with non-whites. Why is that so awful? Why is that the crime of the century? I know as an American, I'm tired of all this Mexican third world invasion that has been taking place for decades now. It's been displacing the white majority, and actually what happens is the white taxpayer ends up funding all of these Mexican third worlders to flood in here and have anchor babies. And they bleed the system dry. They soak the American taxpayer for everything they can get, free social services, welfare, food stamps, and it's all funded by the American taxpayer. The predominantly middle-class white taxpayer funds this. And why wouldn't white Americans be angry about this? Well, they're not allowed to be angry. They're not allowed to have a voice. They're not allowed to take a stand against black on white violence, because if they do, they're racist. That's the silencing word that everybody uses when a white person objects to being dispossessed in their own land or their own area. And I know what you anti-whites are going to say. Well, what about the Native Americans? Look at what your ancestors did. Oh, karma's a bitch. Oh, you guys deserve it. You know what? I'm not going to get it off on a tangent here, but why don't you look up Kennewick Man in Washington, or the Florida Wendover bog mummies that were found near Cape Canaveral, Florida, which proves that Europeans were here in America long before the so-called Native Americans were. But since we have an anti-white government, we have anti-white history books, we have an anti-white media, they obviously are going to cover up any kind of evidence that might prove otherwise, because their job is to continually pound guilt into white people 24 hours a day in academia, in the media, about how terrible we are, how oppressive we are, and that we're white supremacists. If we object to our cities and our nations being flooded with non-whites, then we're just intolerant, because diversity is just a code word for less white people. That's all that is. because whites are not allowed to have their own homogenous white homeland. It's not allowed. You have to have non-whites flooding in, and it's happening only to white nations, not anywhere else. Okay, black nations are not being flooded with non-blacks. Only white nations are being flooded with non-whites. That's the way it works. And if white people have a problem with it, they are racist, evil Nazis who want to kill 6 million Jews. That's all there is to it. So I support this woman's right to having free speech to voice her opinion. And go ahead and leave your hateful, vile, vulgar, nasty comments for me. And with the same breath, call me a hater.